November 7th, 1931, Atlanta, Georgia, 5 p.m. A drizzling rain envelops the 42 acres of land separating the Briarcliff estate from the rest of the world. The air is heavy and humid. The silence of the elite Druid Hills neighborhood is broken not by thunder, but by a sharp, dry sound. A gunshot, followed immediately by a second one. On the backyard, just a few meters from the private golf course, lies the body of a young woman. Next to her, clutching a smoking .38 caliber revolver in his hand, lies a man in a butler's uniform. His name is Jose Cruz. He is not just a servant. He was the right-hand man of the house owner, his assistant in magic shows, and keeper of secrets. A few minutes later, the DeKalb County Police arrive at the scene of the tragedy. The officers see not just a crime scene. They see the set for the most expensive play in the history of the South of the United States of America. The owner emerges from the mansion's front doors.
Asa Griggs Candler Jr., whom the whole city knows by the nickname Buddy. He is 51 years old. He is the son of the man who gave the world Coca-Cola. He is wearing an impeccable suit, but in his eyes there is something bordering on panic. This is not fear of the law. This is horror that the perfect facade of his life has cracked. At this moment, standing over the body of his favorite magician, the heir to the world's sweetest empire tastes iron and blood. The newspapers the next morning will come out with screaming headlines: "Tragedy at the Candler estate." Journalists will describe a bloody drama of jealousy. Cruz shot his beloved and then took his own life. But none of the reporters that day will write about the main thing. This shot became the beginning of the end for Briarcliff. Look closely at this house. Remember this white facade with majestic columns, which is now illuminated by flashes of police cameras. In just over 20 years, these walls will hear not the laughter of guests and the clink of crystal, but the screams of patients in delirium tremens. The huge ballroom will turn into a ward for the mentally ill. The pool, in which the lights of the mansion are now reflected, will grow over with slime and become a filming location for horror movies. And the owner himself, Asa Candler Jr., the man who could buy any city in the state, will end his days destroyed by exactly what he tried to escape from all his life. But now, in 1931, it is still a dream. This is Briarcliff, a monument to human vanity built on sugar money. To understand how this dream turned into a nightmare, we must rewind the tape back. We must understand the architecture of this catastrophe. Because Asa Candler's story is not just the biography of a rich heir, it is the anatomy of a fall. It is the story of what happens when a person has unlimited resources to bring to life their darkest fantasies. The police take away the bodies. The rain intensifies, washing the blood off the perfectly manicured lawn.
Asa returns to the house. He walks through the huge hall, past the organ costing $94,000. He goes up to his magic room on the 3rd floor, where he keeps the props of the great Houdini. He locks the door. Downstairs, in the private zoo, the lions begin to roar, sensing the smell of death. Asa pours himself a drink. It is his medicine and his poison. We begin our investigation not with success, but with a premonition of trouble. Because Briarcliff was never just a house. It was a golden cage that Asa built for decades to lock inside the most dangerous beast, himself. Welcome to the Coca-Cola house. Welcome to hell that looks like paradise. To understand the motives of the man who built this labyrinth, we need to go back to the origins, to the time when the Candler surname became synonymous with the word money. and to the curse that came bundled with this fortune.
Asa's father was an ascetic and a Methodist. The son became an eccentric and an alcoholic. This conflict was laid in the foundation even before the first cubic meter of concrete was poured. The story of Briarcliff is a story of struggle, the struggle of a man with the shadow of his great father. And in this struggle, Asa Jr. chose the strangest weapons: architecture, magic, and wild animals. He thought he was building a fortress. In fact, he was building a mausoleum. And the first stone in this mausoleum was laid long before the shots of 1931. It was laid on the day when Asa Jr. decided that being just a son was not enough for him. He wanted to become a god in his own world. But, as is known, gods cruelly punish those who try to take their place. In a moment, we will see exactly how this painful ambition was formed. We will see the boy who grew up in the shadow of a giant soda bottle, and the man who tried to smash this bottle to build his own crystal palace from the shards. To understand the tragedy of Briarcliff, one must first understand the weight of one surname: Candler. In Atlanta at the beginning of the 20th century, this name meant more than the name of the governor or mayor. It meant absolute, overwhelming power. The roots of this story go back to 1888, when pharmacist Asa Candler Sr., the father of our hero, made what was possibly the most profitable deal in the history of capitalism. He bought the Coca-Cola formula from John Pemberton and his partners. The deal amount was $2,300. Remember this figure: $2,300 for a brand that in 30 years would be worth $25 million. Asa Sr. was a man of the tough old school. A deeply religious Methodist, he believed that every cent should be earned with sweat and blood. He despised luxury. He believed in asceticism and hard work. And it was in this puritanical, strict atmosphere in 1880 that his second son was born, Asa Griggs Candler Jr., or simply Buddy. From early childhood, Buddy was a mistake in his father's impeccable equation. Where the father saw an asset, the son saw a toy. Where the father saw sin, the son saw an opportunity for a show. Buddy grew up in a world where money flowed from the tap, but access to this tap was controlled by a man who considered fun a crime against morality. This created in the psyche of the future owner of Briarcliff a deep, unhealing rift. He desperately wanted his father's approval, but even more, he wanted to surpass him. But how do you surpass a man who literally bottled the American dream? Buddy's answer was not in soda, but in concrete and speed. This was his first strategy to escape the shadow, doing what his father considered madness. In 1909, Buddy leads the construction of the Atlanta Speedway racetrack. This was his first manifesto. He invested $300,000 in this project, an astronomical sum at the time, approximately $9 million in today's equivalent. This was the moment of truth. Buddy wanted to give the South races, speed, modernity. But on opening day, when roaring engines tore through the silence of Georgia, the track surface began to disintegrate under the wheels of the race cars. Dust, mud, technical failure. The drivers refused to race. The public was disappointed. The project went bankrupt almost instantly. For the father, this was proof of the son's incompetence. For Buddy, it became a trauma that would change his approach to life forever. Exactly this failure of 1909 launches the chain reaction that will lead to the construction of Briarcliff. Humiliated by the public fiasco and his father's cold condemnation, Buddy decides to leave. Not just to move, but to flee. In 1910, he buys land in DeKalb County. At that time,
it was wilderness, a farm, a place with no high society or judgmental stares from Atlanta's business elite. Here we see the formation of Buddy Candler's philosophy. If you cannot win by the rules of the old world, he will create his own world, where he will be the sole judge and lawmaker. He starts not with a palace, but with the idea of autonomy. He goes into a business as far removed as possible from his father's lively, bubbling empire. He goes into real estate, and, more tellingly, into the funeral business. Buddy takes over the management of Westview Cemetery. The irony of fate, the son whose surname is associated with energy and life begins to earn on death. But it is here that his true talent emerges, the talent of a visionary who fears no taboos. He builds a crematorium when the South still considers burning bodies barbarism. He turns the cemetery into a landscape park. He proves he can make money where others see only grief. By the mid-1920s, Asa Jr. is no longer just a rich man's son. He is a man who forged himself through contradiction. He is rich, but an outsider. He owns skyscrapers in downtown Atlanta, but lives on a farm. He is a king, exiled from his kingdom, building a new fortress on the border of civilization. By this point, his worldview crystallizes. For Asa Sr., money was a tool for serving God and society. For Asa Jr., money became a tool for creating an alternative reality. He realized that reality is malleable if you have enough of a checkbook. He stopped trying to be a good businessman in his father's understanding. He became an architect of illusions. But for building the great illusion, concrete alone is not enough. A soul is needed. A partner is needed. Someone who will share this madness and give it form. At this moment, the story shifts from solitary rebellion to strategic alliance. Buddy realizes that for true greatness, he needs not just a house, but a stage. And he needs the leading actress. His first wife, Helen McGill, was his support. But it is their union, and then the subsequent events, that will become the catalyst for turning an ordinary farm into Briarcliff, a monument that will challenge the heavens themselves. By 1916, Coca-Cola Company revenues are growing in geometric progression. The Candler family sells the company to a consortium of investors for $25 million in 1919. Buddy's share is huge. Now he has not just capital, he has the resources of a small state. The barriers have fallen. There is no longer any need to look back at his father. The patriarch sold the work of his life. Now Buddy is free, and this freedom scares. Because there is nothing more dangerous for a person with imagination than the absence of financial restrictions. We are approaching the moment when the mansion appears on the blueprints. But this is not just a building. It is the psychological portrait of a man who decided to prove to the whole world that he exists. He will hire the best architects. He will bring masters from Europe. He will order rare breeds of marble to be brought. But behind all this splendor will hide that very gaping void that formed in 1909 on the ruins of the racetrack. Briarcliff will become an attempt to fill this void with gold, music, and magic. 1920. The Jazz Age bursts into America, drowning out the sermons of Methodists with the rhythms of the Charleston. While Prohibition drives alcohol underground, money comes out into the open. For Asa Candler Jr., the moment of strategic transition arrives. He is 40 years old. The time of experiments with races is over. The time of building an empire of stone begins.
Here, the second key player in this drama takes the stage, the architect, Dan Bodin. Their alliance is the classic partnership of a mad visionary and a pragmatic executor. Bodin was not a star architect from New York. He was a local professional, but it was he who understood the main task, to build not a house, but a set that would make Atlanta forget about the racetrack failure. The strategy was simple but ambitious, to turn a modest farm into an estate that would compete with European palaces. This was the marriage of two worlds, the rough, fast money of Coca-Cola and the aristocratic aesthetics of the old world. Asa no longer wanted to be the pharmacist's son. He wanted to become a lord. Bodin begins work. In 1920, the old farmhouse is demolished almost to the ground. In its place, a white giant begins to grow. The style is Georgian Revival. This choice is not random. It is the architectural language of power, stability, and tradition, everything that Asa's restless nature so lacked. But in 1925, an event occurs that turns a simply expensive house into the legend of Briarcliff. Asa takes a step that finally separates him from his father. He decides to integrate into the residential house an object that belongs in a cathedral. This is the first major turn in the estate's architecture. Asa orders an organ from the Aeolian Company. This is not just a musical instrument. It is a monster weighing several tons. To install it, Bodin is forced to build an additional wing onto the house, a huge music hall that will later be called Deovis Hall. The price of the instrument is $94,000. In modern money, this is more than $1.5 million. Think about this figure. $1.5 million just for air passing through pipes in a certain way. It was the 8th largest private organ installation in the world. The installation of the organ becomes a symbolic merging of Asa's two personalities. On one hand, it is a tribute to his father, who loved church music. On the other, it is an act of flagrant vanity. The organ was so powerful that when Asa pressed the keys, the vibration was felt within a mile radius. Neighbors complained that their dishes were rattling, but Asa did not care. He bought himself a voice that could not be ignored. This strategic move transforms Candler's social position. Briarcliff stops being just a private residence. It becomes a cultural magnet. Asa opens the doors to the public. He hosts organ concerts, invites the best musicians. People who yesterday laughed at his racetrack failure today stand in line to get into his music hall. Briarcliff begins to grow flesh. It is no longer lifeless blueprints. It is a complex organism where the old meets the new. Outside, strict white columns referring to antiquity. Inside, cutting-edge electrification systems, industrial kitchens, and that very organ controlled by the most complex pneumatics. Asa creates his own ecosystem. In this new world, he controls everything. From the temperature of the water in the pool to the sound waves in the music hall. The house becomes an extension of his ego. But it is precisely in this grandeur that the foundation for future isolation is laid. The higher the walls rose, and the louder the music played, the less of the real world penetrated inside. By the mid-1920s, construction is complete. Before us stands an object that was supposed to become a monument to success, but became a monument to loneliness. The snow-white facade, perfectly symmetrical, hides behind it a labyrinth of rooms, each of which screams of the desire to be noticed. But the most interesting thing happens not in the grand halls. The most interesting thing is how the architecture begins to influence the psyche of the owner. The house begins to demand conformity. You cannot live in a palace and behave like a mere mortal. Briarcliff begins to dictate its own rules of the game, and Asa gladly accepts them. He surrounds himself with a retinue: servants, musicians, technicians for maintaining the organ. But amid this noise, a quiet, personal tragedy begins to form. His wife, Helen, the mother of his children, the woman who walked with him from the shadow of his father to the brilliance of Briarcliff, begins to fade. While Asa builds eternity from stone, the life of the closest person slips through his fingers. In 1927, Helen dies. This moment becomes a watershed. The house, built for a family, instantly empties despite crowds of guests. His wife's death shatters the old structure of Asa's life. And here the paradox occurs. Instead of retreating into mourning, Asa accelerates. In the same year, he marries for the second time to Florence Stevenson. This new marriage and the renovated house mark the beginning of the strangest and darkest chapter in the estate's history. If with Helen, Briarcliff was a majestic home, then with Florence and the widowed and then remarried Asa, it turns into a carnival. The brakes are off. There is no longer the restraining factor of old morality. Now, with the stage fully set and the scenery in place, we can enter inside. We must walk these corridors to understand how grandeur intertwines with madness. Imagine that you are standing before the main gates of Briarcliff in 1930. Before you is not just a house. Before you is a manifesto. 42 acres of perfectly manicured landscape separate you from the reality of the Great Depression, which is already beginning to devour America. But here, behind the wrought iron fence, time has stopped. At the end of the long, winding driveway rises it, the white giant in the Georgian Revival style. The first thing that catches the eye is the scale. The building's facade is designed to overwhelm. The huge white columns supporting the portico look like the legs of an ancient colossus. This is architecture of domination. Asa Candler Jr. did not build a cozy nest. He built a capital for one man. As you ascend the wide stone steps, you physically feel yourself shrinking in size. This is a deliberate psychological effect. The guest must feel like a spectator, allowed to enter the sanctuary. The doors open, and you enter the main hall. Here the air smells of beeswax, old wood, and cold marble. 42 rooms, 7 bedrooms for the family, 9 bathrooms, 3 kitchens. But the numbers do not convey the sensation. The walls are paneled with dark oak brought from Europe, which has absorbed centuries of someone else's history. Underfoot is parquet that you are afraid to step on. Huge crystal chandeliers hang from the ceilings like frozen, icy waterfalls, refracting light in thousands of facets. But the heart of the house does not beat here. Walk further, through the enfilade of rooms, and you will find yourself in a space that violates all laws of residential architecture: the music hall. This is a 2-story high room created for one single purpose: to house the lungs of this house, the Aeolian organ. Try to imagine the sound. When Asa sits down at the console and presses the keys, the air in the room compresses. Thousands of pipes, hidden behind decorative grills and tapestries, begin to vibrate. This is not just music. This is infrasound that passes through the body. The basses are so deep that guests' champagne glasses tremble in their hands. Asa plays not for listeners. He plays for himself, feeling how under his fingers a machine worth $1.5 million modern dollars comes alive. At this moment, he controls the elements. He is the conductor of his own world, where every note sounds exactly as he commanded. However, if the music hall is Asa's soul striving for the sublime, then the 3rd floor is his subconscious striving for deception. Climb the stairs. Leave behind the prim living rooms and dining rooms where dinner is served on silver. At the very top is the ballroom, but Asa calls it differently. This is the magic room. Here the walls are painted gold. This is not a metaphor. Gold paint covers everything, creating the sensation of being inside a precious jewelry box. But the main thing here is not the decor, but the contents. The room is stuffed with props. Mirrors with double bottoms, boxes in which objects disappear, pigeon cages that appear out of nowhere. Shelves are bursting with books on occultism and stage magic. This is the psychological key to understanding the owner. A man possessing real power and money is obsessed with illusion. Asa spends thousands of hours honing his sleight of hand. Why? Because in real business, he suffered failures. In reality, the racetrack concrete cracked and investments burned out. But here, in the Golden Room, Asa is omnipotent. If he wants, a coin will disappear. If he wants, it will appear. This is control taken to the absolute. Here, he is the Houdini of his own loneliness. He spends evenings here, performing in front of the mirror or a narrow circle of servants, among whom is that very Jose Cruz, whose loyalty borders on fanaticism. But the architecture of Briarcliff's madness does not stop at the mansion's walls. We step outside. From the back terrace opens a view of the strangest element of this estate: a private zoo. This is not just a few cages with exotic birds. This is a full-fledged menagerie that could rival the city zoos of that time. 4 elephants. Their names are known to everyone in Atlanta: Coca, Cola, Pos, and Refreshens. The giant animals roam a specially fenced area. Imagine this surreal contrast: the aristocratic white mansion, sounds of organ music coming from open windows, and the trumpeting roar of elephants tearing through the silence of Georgia. Next to them are cages with predators: lions, leopards, bears, the baboons that bare their teeth at guests. The smell here is different. This is not the smell of wax and perfume. This is the sharp, musky smell of wild nature and danger. Neighbors in the elite Druid Hills neighborhood live in constant fear. At night, they hear the roar of lions coming from the Candler estate. Asa receives endless complaints, but they only stroke his ego. Who can forbid him from owning the jungle? He bought this land. He bought these beasts. He bought the right to ignore other people's fear. Also on the territory is a huge pool. This is not just a water reservoir. This is a public space that Asa opens to Atlanta residents. Above the pool shines a neon sign: Briarcliff Pool. Coca-Cola is sold here. Children laugh here. Asa loves to watch them from the balcony of his golden floor. He likes being a benefactor. He likes being loved. This is the paradox of his nature. He builds fences to wall himself off from the world and immediately opens the gates to let in the crowd. He needs spectators. Without spectators, the theater is dead. In this architectural schizophrenia lies the portrait of Asa Candler at the peak of his bloom. The house is divided into zones, just like his soul. The basement and service areas are the mechanism hidden from view. The first floor is the mask of grandeur, the face for society, where everything is proper and noble. The music hall is the place for spiritual catharsis. The third floor is the playroom of an aging boy playing wizard, and the garden is the zone of unbridled power, where he keeps nature itself on a chain. Every detail in this house, from the door handle to the tiger cage, screams, "Look at me!" But if you listen closely, behind this scream, you hear a whisper of uncertainty. Asa fills the space with things animals, and sounds because silence is unbearable for him. In silence, he is left alone with himself. A son who never became a father. A businessman who prefers tricks to deals. By 1930, Briarcliff reaches the peak of its splendor. It is a state within a state. It has its own power plant, its own laundries, its own greenhouses. Asa seems invulnerable. He is surrounded by walls, money, and magic. But it is precisely at this moment, when the facade shines brightest, that the foundation begins to crack. And this crack runs not through stone, but through human fates. We return to the Golden Room on the 3rd floor. The silence here is deceptive. If, in the 1920s, this place was a sanctuary of innocent hobby, then, by the early 1930s, it turns into a bunker of escapism. Asa Candler Jr. spends more and more time here. His obsession with magic stops being just a rich man's pastime. It becomes a symptom. He tries to control reality with mirrors and hidden mechanisms, because beyond these walls, reality slips out of his control. Here, we must look closely at the figure standing in the owner's shadow. Jose Cruz, a young Filipino whom Asa brought from his travels. Officially, a valet. In fact, the only person who knows Candler's trick secrets.
Cruz is not just a servant. He is the co-pilot in this flight of fancy. They rehearse disappearance tricks for hours, creating the illusion that the laws of physics do not apply to them. But on November 7th, 1931, the illusion shatters. The blood on the golf course grass is real. The death of Jose Cruz and his beloved is not a stage trick where the assistant emerges from the box alive and unharmed to applause. This is raw, dirty, irreversible death. For Asa, this is a blow not to the heart, but to the worldview. The man who helped him create illusions destroyed himself with reality. Candler's reaction to this tragedy reveals the deep moral ambivalence of his nature. Atlanta newspapers go mad. The scandal is colossal. A murder occurred in the Coca-Cola prince's house. What does Asa do? He does not change his life. He does not close the magic room. He tries to drown out this incident as if it were a false note in the organ part. But the public begins to look at Briarcliff differently. If before it was the house of an eccentric millionaire, now it seems sinister. Neighbors in Druid Hills, the richest people in the state, begin to whisper. They don't like this carnival. They don't like that their peace is disturbed by gunshots and police sirens. And here a real conflict flares up. The conflict between Asa and the society he so wanted to impress. The catalyst becomes his pride, the private zoo. What for Asa is a symbol of power, for his neighbors becomes a source of constant terror. The smell of elephant manure spreads with the wind for miles. The roar of lions prevents sleep at night. But Asa ignores the complaints. He believes that his wealth gives him the right to impose his rules. The crisis comes in 1935, and it is tragicomic but indicative. One of the baboons escapes from the enclosure. The monkey jumps the fence and attacks neighbor Mrs. Hartsfield as she gets into her car. The baboon bites the woman and snatches her purse. This incident could have been just an anecdote, if not for Asa's reaction. The neighbor sues for $50,000, a huge sum. But instead of quietly settling the matter, apologizing and paying compensation, Asa goes to war. He hires lawyers. He argues. In court, a detail emerges that perfectly characterizes his attitude toward people.
Asa was more concerned that the baboons stole $60 in cash from the purse than the woman's injuries. At this moment, we see the true face of Briarcliff's owner. This is the face of a spoiled child who doesn't want to share toys and doesn't want to take responsibility for his toys biting. The voice of God here should sound harsh. Can a man who spends $1.5 million on an organ be justified, but sues the injured neighbor out of principle? The trial becomes a turning point. Asa loses not money. For him, it's pennies. He loses status. Society rejects him. Under pressure from the public and lawsuits, he is forced to make a decision that breaks his pride. In 1935, he announces the closure of the zoo. This is not just handing over the animals. This is capitulation. A caravan of trucks takes the elephants Coca, Cola, Pos, and Refreshens to the Atlanta City Zoo, Zoo Atlanta. Newspapers present it as Candler's generous gift to the city. But we know the truth. This was exile. Asa did not gift them. They were taken from him by the circumstances he himself created with his arrogance. The pool empties. The cages stand open and rust. Briarcliff begins to lose its vital force. The house becomes quieter. The organ still plays, but now this music sounds in a vacuum. The second wife, Florence, enjoys the luxury, but Asa begins to plunge into an even deeper depression. Alcohol becomes his main companion. The paradox of the Coca-Cola Heir, a drink created as an alcohol alternative, reaches its apogee. Asa drinks a lot, and he drinks terribly. The brilliant mind that designed skyscrapers and managed millions begins to drown in the bottle. His liver is destroyed, as surely as his reputation. By the end of the 1930s, before us is no longer that energetic empire builder. Before us is a tired, disappointed man locked in a golden cage of several thousand square meters. He is surrounded by things, but lonely among people. The Great Depression devours the country's economy, and personal depression devours Asa Candler. But the worst is yet to come. The financial foundation on which this colossus stands proves as unreliable as the psyche of its owner. 1948 arrives. The lights in Briarcliff burn not as brightly. The great party that lasted almost 3 decades is coming to an end. America has changed. After World War II, the world has become pragmatic, harsh, and fast. In this new world, there is no place for private palaces with organs and golden rooms for tricks.
Asa Candler Jr., who is already 68 years old, finds himself face to face with the most terrible enemy that cannot be bribed or deceived by sleight of hand. This enemy is time. Candler's financial empire, which seemed unshakable, begins to waver. His real estate investments stop bringing super profits. Maintaining the 42-room estate, heating, electricity, payroll for the staff of servants, all this turns into a black hole, sucking the remnants of capital. The man who once wrote checks without looking at the amounts is now forced to count expenses. Here occurs the key psychological turning point. For the first time in his life, Asa does not build, but retreats. He understands that Briarcliff is an anchor pulling him to the bottom. The dream has become a burden. And he makes a decision that completely contradicts his previous philosophy of accumulation. He decides to get rid of the house. In 1948, Asa Candler Jr. sells the Briarcliff estate to the General Services Administration of the United States of America. The deal amount is symbolic compared to the invested funds. He hands over the keys to his kingdom to the state. But the most astonishing thing in this story is not the fact of the sale itself, but what this palace turns into.
Fate has a cruel sense of humor. The state plans to open a hospital in the mansion. But not just any hospital. In 1953, in the halls where champagne once flowed and the laughter of Atlanta's elite sounded, the Georgia Clinic opens. This is the first specialized treatment facility for alcoholics in the state. Ponder this irony. The house, built on money from non-alcoholic Coca-Cola, turned by the Heir into the capital of parties and alcoholic escapism, now becomes a place where people are trying to be saved from the bottle. The pool where soda was sold, and the ballroom where glasses clinked, are now filled with people struggling with the same demons that tormented Asa himself. Asa himself, by this time, is already deeply ill. His liver is destroyed by years of alcohol abuse. He moves to a penthouse in the Remington Hotel. His world shrinks from 42 acres to a few rooms. But strangely, this fall brings him peace. He no longer has to maintain the illusion of grandeur. He doesn't need to be a magician. He doesn't need to be the son of that very candler. He becomes just an old, tired man who watches the sunset of his life from the window of a city apartment. This stage is transformation through loss. Asa loses the house but gains the truth. His legacy is not a dynasty. His children will not be able to hold on to the wealth. His legacy becomes the building itself, which changes its function from serving one man's egoism to serving the public good. The walls that once divided now begin to heal. In January 1953, Asa Griggs Candler Jr. dies of liver cancer. He passes away just at the moment when his former home receives its first patients. He misses the official opening of the clinic by just a few months. The death of the Titan passes quietly, without the pompous funerals he might have planned in his youth. But the house's story does not end here. On the contrary, it enters its darkest and most surreal phase, which will give birth to legends that live to this day. After the owner's death, Briarcliff finally stops being a home. It becomes an institution. In the 1960s, the complex expands. The Georgia Mental Health Center opens here. Ugly concrete buildings are added to the majestic mansion, and, most importantly, tunnels begin to be dug underground. These long, cold underground corridors connect the old mansion to the new buildings. Imagine this picture. Doctors and nurses push gurneys with mentally ill patients through the underground passages to go up the elevator to the Golden Room, where group therapy sessions now take place. The luxury of the past overlays the sterility and madness of the present. The stucco on the ceilings now looks down on people in straitjackets. The organ is silent, boarded up with planks, like a giant animal in hibernation. The transformation is complete. Asa Candler's dream has mutated. He wanted to build paradise on earth, but he built the perfect set for purgatory. The crisis of his life, alcoholism and depression, became the profile of the institution that occupied his house. It looks as if the house itself absorbed the psychosis of its creator and now attracts thousands of similar stories to itself. At this point, we see how one man's personal tragedy dissolves into the collective pain of thousands of patients. Briarcliff no longer belongs to the Candlers. It belongs to the ghosts of the mind. But it is precisely this that saved the building from demolition. If it were just a house, it would have been demolished long ago for new cottage development. But as a clinic, it survived. Madness became its preservative. Now we stand on the threshold of the finale. We must understand what this story means for us today. Why do the ruins of Briarcliff still attract us? Today, Briarcliff still stands. If you make your way through the overgrowth in Druid Hills, you will see it. The white facade has grayed from time and soot. The plaster is crumbling, exposing red brick like old wounds that refuse to heal. The windows, once shining with the light of thousands of candles, are now boarded up with plywood or gape with blackness. But this house is not dead. It has transformed into something greater than just an abandoned building. It has become a cultural phenomenon, a symbol that has outgrown its creator.
In recent years, millions of people around the world have seen Briarcliff without even realizing it. When you turn on the series Stranger Things and see the gloomy, frightening Hawkins lab where inhumane experiments are conducted on children, you see Asa Candler's house. Hollywood scouts did not choose this place by chance. Briarcliff's walls emit that very aura of hidden threat and shattered hopes needed for a story about monsters. The irony of fate reaches its absolute here. Asa Candler Jr. dreamed all his life of being a great showman. He wanted his house to be a stage for magic. And after 100 years, his wish came true in the most perverted way. His house became the main set for the most popular horror fairy tale of modernity. He is again in the center of attention, but now he plays the role of the villain. The magic room, where Asa showed tricks with pigeons, became the ward for Eleven's telekinetic experiments. The real story of madness and the fictional story of horror have merged into one whole. But let's step away from Netflix and look at the real legacy. Currently, the complex is owned by Emory University. There are plans for restoration, turning the mansion into a boutique hotel or conference center. But every time these plans clash with reality, restoring Candler's dream costs tens of millions of dollars. The house resists. It seems to want to remain a ruin. Why is the story of Briarcliff so important for us today? Why can't we just demolish it and build condominiums in its place? Because Briarcliff is the perfect mirror of the American dream that is scary to look into. It is a story about how money cannot buy meaning. Asa Candler Jr. had resources that 99% of people cannot even dream of. He could have built universities, hospitals, museums. He could have changed the world, like his father, who gave the planet the most recognizable brand in history. Instead, Asa spent the fortune on gold paint, an organ that shook the earth, and 4 elephants. He spent his life creating a bubble in which he was the main one. And when the bubble burst, there was nothing left inside but silence and dust. Compare the legacy of father and son. Asa Sr. left behind Coca-Cola, a liquid that is in every refrigerator from Alaska to Zimbabwe. This is a legacy that lives, changes, and flows. Asa Jr. left behind stone, heavy, immobile, crumbling stone. This is a lesson for any modern empire builder. If your foundation is only your own ego, your building is doomed to become a haunted house. Walking today through the empty corridors of Briarcliff, you physically feel the loneliness of its owner. The Aeolian organ has long been dismantled and removed, its pipes silent. In the pool, where water once splashed and soda was sold, trees now grow, breaking through the concrete. Nature is taking back what is hers. Those very jungles that Asa tried to put in cages ultimately swallowed his house. But there is also a strange, tragic beauty in this. Briarcliff has endured. It survived the Great Depression. It survived the death of its owners. It survived thousands of alcoholics and mentally ill who sought salvation in its walls. It survived vandals and time. It stands as a monument to human stubbornness. Asa Candler Jr. was not a hero. He was not a villain in the classical sense either. He was a man crushed by the weight of his own surname. He was Icarus, who instead of wings of wax, built himself a palace of concrete. He wanted to fly to the sun, but built a labyrinth in which he got lost himself. Today's viewer, looking at these ruins, must ask himself one question. Not how much did it cost, but why was it needed?
We live in an era of digital vanity, when everyone builds their virtual Briarcliff in social networks, trying to seem more successful, happier, and more significant than they really are. The story of Asa Candler reminds us the facade can be dazzlingly white, the columns can be tall, and the music loud. But if behind this facade there is nothing but the fear of being ordinary, then sooner or later the music will fade, and only the echo will remain. The finale of this story is not written in history books, but on the walls of the house itself. If you listen carefully, standing in the center of the ruined music hall, you will not hear the roar of lions or the applause of guests. You will hear silence. This is the true legacy of Buddy Candler. He bought the most expensive silence in the world. The story of Briarcliff is complete, but as long as these walls stand, the lesson continues. The greatest castles built on the sand of vanity always turn into ruins. And only in these ruins do we finally see the truth.